My name is Yoganand Michael Carroll, and I'm the founder of the Pranakriya School of Yoga Healing Arts, and I'm a senior teacher in the Carroll School of Yoga. Yoga plays an important role in my life. I've been a practitioner my whole adult life, and for many, many years I've been a teacher and a trainer of teachers. Sometimes when I look out at the yoga world, I see a lot of innovation. Yoga gives us something that we love. It gives us something that pulls us back again and again. As we practice, it frees up our creativity. And then what do we do but apply that creativity to yoga? We come up with new ways to practice and new understandings and new syntheses of yoga and other things. Recently, on a couple of occasions, students have brought to my attention strong statements made on social media by mostly yoga teachers in reaction to some change that is happening in the yoga world. What I've heard several times is a simple statement: that's not yoga. That's not yoga. I think what the teachers mean is, that's not the yoga that I love. That's not the yoga that I inherited from my teachers. That's not what I expect yoga to be. So I feel uncomfortable with that change. Well, I learned a long time ago that if there's a word that I don't understand, I'm not sure of the definition, the best thing to do is look it up. So what I would like to do on this video is take a little journey through the history of yoga based on the dictionary. What does yoga mean? What has yoga meant in the past? When I'm in a class and a teacher is speaking to me something from the Yoga Sutra, I like to think that I'm sitting here practicing exactly what Patanjali was practicing when he wrote the sutra 1600 years ago. When I'm in a yoga class and a teacher is speaking something from yoga philosophy, I really like to think that I am doing the practices that were described in the Hatha Pradipika, written in the 14th century. For a lot of folks, those things don't matter. I love yoga, it makes me feel good, just chill and keep going. But for students who are more serious in their approach to yoga, these things matter. So this is for you. The first thing I did in my search for the history of yoga is I went online to Merriam-Webster. Here is the definition of yoga according to Merriam-Webster from Merriam-Webster.com. It has two definitions. One, when it's capitalized, when the word yoga is capitalized, a Hindu theistic philosophy teaching the suppression of all activity of body, mind, and will in order that the self may realize its distinction from them and attain liberation. And then a second definition, a system of physical postures, breathing techniques, and sometimes meditation derived from yoga, with a capital Y, but often practiced independently, especially in Western cultures, to promote physical and emotional well-being. Now that entry, those two definitions are very helpful. Yes, for most of its history, yoga was a religion, a subset of the Hindu religion. It's in the last 100 years that we have extracted the physical practices from the religion and made yoga a standalone practice that generates predominantly health benefits. There might be some spirituality there. A lot of folks feel that, but that spirituality doesn't have to be there. There are many, many classes taught today that are purely physical, so that fits. A system of physical practices, breathing techniques, and sometimes meditation derived from yoga, but often practiced independently, especially in Western cultures, to promote physical and emotional well-being. That fits, but it still feels a little bit vague to me. Is the yoga the practices, the postures, and the breathing exercises, or is yoga something happening behind the scenes as an effect of these breathing exercises? In other words, is yoga what I'm doing, or is yoga the intention or the effect of what I'm doing, or a particular effect from what I'm doing? So Merriam-Webster hasn't given me an answer that I'm satisfied with, so I'm going to go back to my favorite Sanskrit dictionary, the one that I believe is the best ever made. This dictionary was first published in 1899 and is still well respected in academic circles. This dictionary is by Monier-Williams, who was a professor of Sanskrit in Oxford, way back there. This dictionary, if you happen to have a copy, as I do, is a real doorstop. 1,300 pages. It's a pretty massive tome and has been a wonderful treasure. In the past couple of years, though, this book has been made into a digital PDF that you can download free from the internet. If you just run a Google search on the title of the dictionary, you're sure to find it. So, what does the best, probably Sanskrit dictionary ever made tell us about the origin of yoga? Well, it's pretty fascinating. If we look up yoga, we find that the word yoga has the longest definition in the dictionary. Now, this dictionary gives the etymology, the history of words, so that tells us that yoga has a very, very rich history. And we're going to dive into that history now. So this is the beginning of the dictionary definition of yoga from Monier-Williams Sanskrit dictionary. Do you notice the entry has the word yoga written in the script that is most commonly used for Sanskrit today? That script is called Devanagari, and it literally means the city of the gods. The idea is that divine ideas are communicated through this script, through these words, words that can lead to enlightenment, to the divine. Sanskrit did not have a script, a writing form, until the 2nd or 3rd century BCE. So that's about 2,300 years ago. By that time, the Sanskrit language was already very old, and it was exclusively an oral tradition. Folks would compose texts in Sanskrit, they would memorize those texts, they would pass them down to their children. A priesthood formed around this language because in order to memorize these texts, a great amount of effort was required. So the best way to do that was in an education system where you had folks who were actually trained to memorize these texts. When Sanskrit was first written down, it was written down in a text called Brahmi. And Brahmi, no one would probably recognize today other than a historian or a linguist. Devanagari didn't come into play until about the 12th century. So there were several different scripts, writing systems that were applied to Sanskrit before Devanagari came along. So at the very top of the entry, we have the word yoga in Devanagari. Now, this dictionary gives a very good etymology. So the very first entry is from the oldest text, the Rig Veda. Now with Sanskrit, we don't have newspapers, we don't have continuous writing from ancient times. What we have are texts, and sometimes these texts are hundreds of years apart. Sometimes we might have one text representing a period of a couple of hundred years. That's all that we have inherited from that time period. So with Sanskrit, it's not unusual for a word to have a certain meaning in one text, and then in the next text that we have possibly a couple of hundred years later, the meaning of that word has changed. The Sanskrit language evolved, and words tended to become more complex. They tended to gather meanings as we go. Now, looking at this entry from the Monier-Williams Sanskrit dictionary, the entry of the word yoga, if you look on the third line, you see RV, and this text uses a lot of abbreviations. RV stands for Rig Veda. So the words that came before are definitions of yoga from the Rig Veda. And you can see that in the Rig Veda, yoga meant the act of yoking, joining, attaching, harnessing, putting to, meaning horses, putting horses to some use or to some place, as in yoking a horse to a chariot or putting a horse in a barn. That was called yoga. And, interesting, that's all that yoga meant in the Rig Veda. joining or yoking or attaching or harnessing. And yoga was used, the word shows up quite a few times in the Rig Veda, meaning just those things. If you look at the next line in the script, you will find SBR, and that's from the Shatapatha Brahmana, which is one of the first Upanishads. It's sort of an Upanishad, but not quite. That was a few hundred years probably after the Rig Veda, and yoga has taken on a couple of other definitions there, or at least a change in slant. After that, we see the Kaushika Sutra, a text, and then the Mahabharata, MBH. All of these, and they go on and on and on, these are all sources from the word yoga. Again, what we have from the past are texts, and the texts are attributed to different time periods. It's very hard to make those time periods precise, but based on how the language had evolved, events that were spoken of, philosophical influences, the scholars have laid out a history that's basically the best that we can do. Now, let's step back from this entry and start to look at what the word yoga means from the beginning. Originally, the very first use of the word, as I said from the Rig Veda, the act of yoking, joining, attaching, harnessing, putting to, referring to horses. It also meant a yoke, a team, a vehicle, a conveyance. Later on, yoga was employment, use, application, performance, equipping or arraying of an army, fixing of an arrow on a bowstring, putting on of armor, a remedy or a cure. Notice none of these have to do with sun salutes or breathing exercises. Yoga evolved to mean a means, an expedient, a device, a way, a manner, or a method. So any method, any way, any device could be called a yoga. It was a supernatural means, a charm, an incantation, or a magical art. A trick, a stratagem, fraud, or deceit. Some less than positive definitions of yoga. An undertaking, a business, a work, an acquisition, a gain, a profit, wealth, or prosperity. An occasion, an opportunity. Any junction, union, combination, contact with. A meeting would be a yoga. A fight with someone, an argument would be a yoga. A junction in the road, a place where two roads come together, would be called a yoga in some texts. To agree, consent, or acquiesce to anything was a yoga. So we are in yoga, we are in alignment, we are in agreement. Mixing of various materials, a mixture. Pancake batter would be a yoga. Partaking of or possessing. Yoga meant to possess. You have united with, you have this thing in your possession, you possess it, it belongs to you. Yoga was a connection, relation in consequence of, on account of, by reason of, according to, or through. Yoga was a process whereby something happened. It meant putting together an arrangement, a disposition, a regular succession. It meant fitting together, fitness, propriety, suitability, suitably, fitly, duty, or in the right manner. Yoga was the right way to do something. Yoga was exertion, endeavor, zeal, diligence, industry, care, attention. It meant strenuously or assiduously. Now, most of these words are from the Upanishads. Yoga was used to refer to the spiritual journey and the ardor, the vigor, the intensity, the exertion that needed to happen for one to become free of Maya and experience oneself as Brahman. Yoga meant with all one's powers and with overflowing zeal. Now, we're starting to arrive at the time of Patanjali. So Patanjali and other philosophers in the 12th, or the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century influenced how yoga was seen. In this time period, yoga became the application or concentration of the thoughts, abstract contemplation, meditation, self-concentration, abstract meditation, and mental abstraction practiced as a philosophical system. So yoga began, and this is started with the Bhagavad Gita and then Patanjali after. Yoga was a system, a collection of ideas that one contemplated, one worked to experience, that would lead one to oneself or to a state beyond the rational mind. Yoga meant any simple act or rite conducive to yoga or abstract meditation, the union of the individual soul with the universal soul, devotion, pious seeking after God. So around the 5th and 6th century, we have the rise of Bhakti Yoga. So looking at this definition, any simple act or rite conducive to yoga. If I decided back then that yoga was to unite my individual soul with the super soul, then any techniques that I came up with that I believed would help me to do that were also called yoga. So I was practicing yoga, the intention of uniting my little soul self with the big self, but any practices or techniques that helped me to do that were also yoga. Now, with Sanskrit words, as you can see here, there's an evolution. And sometimes when a Sanskrit word evolves, it will show up in one text meaning one thing, and then it shows up in a later text meaning something else, and you just basically have two definitions. And sometimes it'll happen that in an old text a word will mean something, and then later text new meanings will be added, and the old will fade away to be replaced by the new. So we have a mix here. We have things, we have definitions getting bigger, and then we also have definitions moving. I think you can see both happening here. Yoga meant contact or mixing with the outer world, and this is true specifically in the Jain religion. Many of the Jain texts were written in Sanskrit. They used the Sanskrit language, Sanskrit words. They used yoga, and yoga was the process of mixing with the outer world. So having a family, having a career, having a job was yoga. Very different from the way we think of yoga today. In astronomy, astrology, they were the same back then. At least in this part of the world, a conjunction or a lucky conjuncture, the coming together of two stars or two planets, a planet coming into a constellation, or the sun rising or setting in a constellation was called a yoga. Also, a constellation, any group of stars, any pairing of stars would be a yoga. In Vedic arithmetic, Vedic mathematics, we have yoga meaning addition, sum, or total. You put several objects together, you know how many coins are in the basket, that sum is a yoga, that sum is the accumulative total, all the pieces coming together. And very big in Sanskrit, grammar. The connection of words and how words fit together was called a yoga. The Sanskrit grammar is very, very complex. It's an inflective language with 8 cases, lots of rules for how words come together. If you look at a sentence in Sanskrit, when it's written in Devanagari text, it's usually one word. All the words in the sentence are squeezed together to make basically a one-word sentence that to decipher, you would need to know where to break the words apart so that you could tell what the individual words meant. And the rules for that combining of words was called yoga. And just a little bit more. A combined or concentrated grammatical rule or aphorism. So any saying, any command, any mnemonic device would be a yoga. So the golden rule would be a yoga, a way of living, a way of being. The connection of a word with its root, origin, or etymological meaning. So the history of a word, what a word means today with what it has meant in the past, how it has evolved would be a yoga. And then, I love this one, a violator of confidence or a spy. someone trying to get into your space, someone trying to get knowledge, potentially to hurt you, was called a yoga. So in its 3,000-year history, the word yoga has meant all of these things. So it's really difficult to say that something, yoga means this, but not that. All of these words are really loaded with potential spiritual meaning or potential spiritual metaphor. Coming together, uniting little self with big self, the struggle to get free. With all of these, the word yoga fit nicely and was frequently used. So, it's very difficult to say what yoga isn't. What yoga is a metaphor for finding ourselves, finding fulfillment, seeking the fullness, the fullest, or the best for ourselves. I hope this was helpful, and I wish you the best of luck in your continued practice and study of yoga. Namaste and Jai Bhagwan.